What's up, y'all? My name is Chris Tate, aka Paint Laurent. I'm an artist and UX UI designer based in Queens. I've spent the last few years studying figure drawing at the Art Students League, and as a result of the pandemic, I haven't been able to practice on a daily basis. So I've recreated that experience with an online series I call Portrait Party Club. Today, I'm going to give you a taste of what that experience is like. So grab a pen and paper, feel free to draw what you see on the screen, or just sit back, relax, and enjoy my demo.
All right, so these first few marks are essentially mistakes. Drawing is a series of mistakes, corrections. And so what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of feeling out the general placement of Michelle on the page, right? So figuring out things like where the top of her head is, where her chin is, where her neck starts, and just putting in some general marks to kind of give myself a sense of direction. All of this is subject to change. I'm not attached to any of it. It's just helping me to kind of find where things belong and where things should start. And as I go through, you can see here that I'm beginning to start to put in some more definitive marks. Like here now we've got the top of her head, and then I'm going to move down and try to capture the other side of her hairline, right? And so as I'm going across, I'm essentially now starting to look for areas that I can use to measure and reference for other parts of the drawing. There I put the top of her ear in, and now I'm putting the back of her skull. There's a little break there. I want to create the three-dimensionality of her hair. And then I'm going to go through and start to kind of rough in some of the other areas, right? Like using her ear to figure out where her cheekbone is. Moving down the side of her face to the other side of her chin, correcting where her chin is, and then putting in a center line, which I'll use to later go back and start to fix and establish where other important elements are. Here I'm going in and I'm putting the ear in, marking the center line, the horizontal center line for her eyes, her eyebrows, right? And then I come in and do the same for the base of her nose, looking for where that is, and the center of her mouth. Now I want to start to continue to find edges, find planes, and I think next I'm going to look into putting in some tone to help me kind of figure out where things are. And here I'm starting to put her hair in. I'm going to put that down and maybe give it some tone just to have like a solid reference point to where I can come back to and be like, you know, that's a good measurement location. Same for her hairline here. Putting in the side of her hair, the top of her hair. I'm going to do the same for the side of her head. I'm not really concerned about the quality of the marks. I'm not looking for any sort of specific details. I'm really just trying to capture things that I can use, and again, the kind of sense for where things are in space. I'm going to clean up that line there and come across and find the center of her neck. And then again, start to put in a side and a bit of a tone to demarcate where that plane is, where it's moving away from the light. Using the shadow essentially helps me to figure out where the light is, right? And that's my biggest concern, is establishing where the light and dark is. And here I'm doing that the same thing again. I'm pulling her hair into the side. And now I'm putting in some of the dark tones on the other side of her head. And I'm going to look for her ear and correct her hairline. Putting in the side of her zygomatic arch, which is essentially that little the bone that sits above your eyeball, that your eyeball sits within. And then I'm going to start to figure out where the eyeballs, the openings of her eyes start and how that relates to the overall drawing, right? So trying to figure out the width of her eyes using the where her eyeballs open and where they end, and then trying to get just a general shape. I'm not looking for anything more specific than generalizations. I'm not going to get specific at all in this drawing, actually. I'm really just going to try and find some of the generalizations so that I can figure things out as I'm moving along. you can see that I'm continuing to kind of rework areas as I'm establishing confidence around them, right? Putting in some of the hair, reestablishing that cheekbone. I will definitely go back and fix that later because I know it's wrong. Fixing the angle of her chin, putting in where what's called the terminator is, and that's where the light stops passing over the form, right? So that dark part of her cheek, the side of her forehead, and then establishing some tone across the top of her forehead to indicate that it's going back in space. Now I'm going to find her ear and figure out where that sits in space. Again, referencing some previous marks that I've made. Going in, establishing a dark tone, putting in a marker so that I can come back to that, and putting in a little bit of a tone just to give myself something to work with, right? Again, one of the most important parts of drawing is being able to make mistakes. Drawing is nothing but mistakes. Over time, those mistakes decrease or they become more and more intentional. But at the start, it's really about just allowing yourself the freedom to go through and figure things out and feel things out. That will help you to create a much more lifelike representation over time, and not something that feels so static. Again, we're not looking for perfect representation within this 10 minutes. We're just looking for general baselines, stuff that we can work with and change over time. And here I found the top of her mouth, the top of her lips, the bottom of her lips, that space underneath her bottom lip, and looking for the corners of her mouth, the base of her nose, relating the ear to the base, establishing the underplane where the bottom of her nose is and giving that just a tiny bit of tone. It's not accurate at all. It doesn't need to be. It just needs to be there, right? Because I can come back to it. And I'm going to find a bit of the side of her nose and her eye socket. Come down, find another part of her nose, a little bit of the nostril, and some of that shadow. And I'm going to relate that to the edge of her mouth because it's easier to find it if I have something to relate it to. If I just try to put it in without relating it to anything, it's probably going to be wrong. But if I have something else in place, like a corner of an eye or something that's close, I can use that as kind of a map. Here, I'm just putting in some tone to indicate where her eyes are and really kind of start to solidify them, putting in a bit of the shape of the mouth and some of the details of the mouth, and working in more and more detail as I move along. And as you can see, this process is continual. It's just back and forth. There's not really a specific moment in time where I'm just honing in on one line and one line only. And so this is the process that I follow when I'm working through a drawing, be it a portrait or a landscape or still life or anything like that. It's kind of a constant struggle of working my way around the drawing the whole time, finding elements, fixing elements, changing elements back and forth, and really trying to develop a conversation with the drawing, trying to develop a conversation with the canvas, right? Working on essentially a piece of music here. So we've got about 1.5 minutes left in this demo, and I want to take a moment to talk about what we've been working on with Portrait Party Club. You can find information by visiting our website, which I'll show here in just a minute. portraitpartyclub.com. You can also find us on Instagram at Portrait Party Club and me at Tate. But next Wednesday, the 22nd, from 5 to 7 p.m., Ilya Mirochnik, a good friend of mine, is going to be doing a 3-hour portrait demo. This Friday from 5 to 7 p.m., Maria Diaz is posing. And then you can also find out information about our models and see what we've been up to. Lastly, I just wanted to show you some clips from past events. We work closely with models to help them get set up and train them so that they can run these sessions from their homes safely and comfortably, and essentially empower them to continue working during these incredibly trying times, because obviously they can't go to studios either, right? So it's been a really awesome experience. It's helped us build a really interesting and engaging community. It's a contribution-based network, so we try to keep it very accessible while still, paying our models and all of that. So we invite you to check out our website. Again, that's portraitpartyclub.com. Instagram's at Portrait Party Club. We have weekly events Tuesday and Friday, from 5 to 7 p.m. Special events with guest lecturers and more. So check us out. Thanks.